Welcome in MPW Digital Postgame Show presented by Dead Soxy. We'll get to them in a second. We'll call Jeffrey Wright here in a minute as well. Ole Miss falling to Arkansas 42-27 in a game where the Razorbacks were up 35-6 at halftime, 42-6 there at one point early in the third quarter after Rocket Sanders took off for a one of his long runs and touchdowns tonight in Fayetteville. Amazingly, Ole Miss 703 maybe total yards, something like that, and lose by 15 points. I mean, just ridiculous stat line. They run for over 400 yards, I think, by the end of the day. So just a crazy game in a lot of ways. Ole Miss got behind early. The officiating was pathetic in the first quarter. But that was not all that went down. Ole Miss did not play well. Arkansas just gashed them there in the second quarter as well. So a lot of stuff going on, and it kind of opened it up. We'll talk to Neil whenever he gets done with the press conference. What's been a crazy week, a weird week, a week full of Lane Kiffin, Auburn talk. You know, this is a worst case scenario for that because Lane is fine with his name in the media. Lane is fine with his name involved with lots of rumors and lots of things. If you think that he's back at Ole Miss next year, then it's easy to say that maybe he did a lot of this stuff from an NIL standpoint to generate interest. But when you don't talk to your team, you don't talk to the media, you get a contract that has gone unsigned and you allow these kind of things to fester. This is the type of game that is the biggest issue with that happening because right, wrong, or indifferent, and look, we're all 85 players or whatever, all one thing, no. But perception, you're bringing in, was the team flat? Did they have a hard time getting past Alabama? Were they distracted from the week going on? There's so many different things that do at least come into play from a talking point standpoint when you're down 35-6, 42-6, and with the way that Lane handles these kind of things. I mean, it at least brings it where it is a very, very valid question to the point that there at the end, I mean, I tweeted about it a second ago, the SEC network crew talking about Ole Miss or Auburn, bringing up Lane Kiffin's job status, talking about potentially taking players. I mean, things that typically you don't get on these broadcasts, especially from an SEC network standpoint, but also just I guess PR, the perception, whatever it is, that just wholly inaccurate. You know, you look at it and they mention Auburn having a new football facility. They mention NIL. Ole Miss has moved into a really good spot from NIL in the last week or two. They've got more corporate sponsorships being announced. If the AL.com report is correct, and I have no reason to think it isn't, Ole Miss might even have more money than Auburn in NIL right now. The Manning Center is being finished next summer in 2023. It's a very even playing field in both those ways. And that was a national broadcast that just went completely one-sided there. And I'm not picking that in doing this Pollyanna thing, but what I'm doing is that everything that's been handled through this process allowed for these things to come out once Ole Miss got behind, once it looked like this. Just kind of the way the game played out overall today. I just kind of found that somewhat fascinating. So, again, we'll take your calls. Got some different thoughts in a lot of ways here as the night goes on. Probably won't be with you. We'll stay with you for a while, but I'm not going to go crazy. Again, 42-27. Quickly, because they paid the bills, let me tell you about Dead Soxy, because you need socks no matter what kind of mood you're in, Christmas and different things. You can buy more and save more. You know the code's Rebel Grove, 25% off if you do $50 worth of socks, free shipping, 30% off with $150 of socks. And then if you go crazy, go ahead and take care of everybody, do it all at once. $250, it's 40% off with free shipping. That's code Rebel Grove. And then they're also doing the player NIL socks. They are a Grove Collective corporate partner. Early access granted there. Troy Brown, Mason Brooks currently on your screen there. The first two, couple different options from a sock from NIL standpoint there from Dead Soxy. So Dead Soxy, great socks, great company. Love their stuff there and appreciate them as always. Taking care of us. So it's Dead Soxy, 25% off with Rebel Grove. So yeah, it's been a weird night, weird game. Let's get Jeffrey quickly. We do to him. Go to him. Neil, what could be at least an interesting press conference because there's no way you can go through Lane's press conference given what SEC Network said, given the way the week went on. I have to think Lane will be asked some semblance of question from the things that you would expect, the things that you would want him to at least have to address here moving forward. So give me 1 second. Take care of that. Appreciate everybody in the stream, everybody hanging out on the show. I know you obviously didn't have a great night from a game standpoint. It's kind of late, so thank you for spending some time with us tonight. I really appreciate it. Just trying to do what Neil did and call the wrong number.
Good evening.
Jeffrey, how are you?
Oh, I am doing well. How about yourself?
I'm all right. I'm fine. I'm not as tired as I thought I might be. I actually feel pretty good. A lot of stuff here. Let's jump into it. I'm reviewing the chat. I'm watching what you guys are talking about. Um, I mentioned a second ago when we get into some actual game minutia, if you want, in a minute. But the big picture is more the story at the moment. Ole Miss down 42-6 at one point, down 35-6 at the half, and I'm not blaming him. He can do whatever he wants. But as I said a second ago, the way that Lane handles job openings has channeled the week, the way that you sort of, just let panic generate through. This is the worst case scenario because when you do that, you don't have the same type of capital when you're in a game like this. When you're winning, it looks really good on a lot of levels. But tonight was a pretty bad night for Lane Kiffin in some ways.
So I think that's a fair point to make. I guess what I would ask is, why was this not the same? So I just go back to when I was working for y'all and when I was there every single day. Why was this not the conversation when Arkansas beat Ole Miss 30-0 in 2014? Because it was the same thing.
It's a valid question. Bo was hurt. Do the quarterback thing. I mean,
but I guess what I would say is if Bo played, they were still getting beat. But yes, they were getting beat before Bo got hurt. But once Bo got hurt, it became what it did. I guess the argument would be when Bo got hurt, at least it motivated Hugh to go get Chad Kelly.
Oh, it definitely did that. It was the reason. But I think, and look, maybe it's 2022, maybe it's 2014, maybe I'm forgetting a little bit as you mentioned that because you had sent it in a text earlier, and I probably should have given it a little more thought. But Hugh was a candidate at Florida, and he was probably going to take the job before he got sentimental after Mississippi State and all those type of things. It's very, very similar. You're right. I think Lane brings more national media attention than Hugh.
Chase.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me stop you right there. I was sitting, so I brought it up on Thursday for a reason. I was sitting next to Neil when Neil confirmed that he was going to be the Florida coach. And what people don't understand, remember how well Ole Miss played against Mississippi State? I think what people don't realize is, and I had friends on that team, they basically called a players-only meeting, and basically it was F Hugh Freeze because he's going to Florida. We're playing for ourselves. My point is, it's the exact same situation, but it feels way more dramatic right now than it did then.
It's because
and
of
I
the
think
national
it was the
media
exact
attention,
same
though. That it was more internal, where here it's completely external, and it's all anybody's talking about to the point that it's impacting the broadcast the last 5 to 8 minutes.
And I think that speaks to the power of Kiffin, right?
It does, sure. What does it mean, though?
But I mean, I don't think to be completely honest, I don't think the job question had anything to do with tonight. But maybe I'm wrong.
You mean the announcers talking about it?
Well, I'm just talking about the actual game. Like, I think what happened tonight is they sucked in the red zone, and you could also, and I'm not one to deny it. There's no denying that the officiating changed the red zone results, but in the end, this sport is about what do you do at the end of drives. And Ole Miss ended up kicking field goals on the end of drives while Arkansas got touchdowns. But, you know, I don't think the team underperformed because they were worried about whether or not their coach was going to be there. I guess that's what I'm saying.
No, I think, and I don't think I do either. I think there's a lot of factors to this. I mean, if you told me there was something outside of tonight that most affected them, I would say it's they played Alabama last week and their expectations and their goals changed and they had a hard time and they were a little flat at times. And then when you had the officiating that clearly impacted the game and it sort of spiraled there early, it kind of went sideways a little bit more than the Lane thing completely did that. I mean, look, let's be honest. Coaches and players are mercenaries to some extent here. But I
Yes.
thought it was interesting last Saturday to Monday that Lane, who typically is, hey, one game, one game, one game, one game, that's all that matters. We're not doing Super Bowl stuff. The Alabama game is bigger to him. And he even admitted, hey, it's been a little harder to let it go. I'm going to talk to you guys on Monday and then whatever. I'm not sure he had the same message for his team, not even on purpose, but just the ability to do that. If something was kind of weird, I think they got caught into a weird environment and they didn't let Alabama go and could not reset, given how things had changed when the West was gone and all those type of things. I mean, if there was a coaching faux pas, I think it's more that direction.
And I would also add, you know, I mean, I don't think this team's built to play in cold weather. Like, you know, you hear about Lane and his like. I do think one thing that's obvious to your point is the team follows the lead of the coach. When the coach is miserable because it's cold, I think the team is. Then you also factor in a quarterback who's not from this area. And to be honest with you, it speaks to me as someone who, as soon as the temperature dips below 50 degrees, he's miserable and he thinks he wants to die. I mean, Jackson even admitted, he's like, I don't like playing when it's cold.
He's from Utah, though. It's been cold. It's not from Southern California.
He's from Southern Utah. But isn't he from Southern Utah?
Still Utah.
Southern Utah is Nevada.
But they had 700 yards of offense.
Yeah, no, and my point is they didn't finish in the red zone. Now, you can make the argument they didn't finish in the red zone because of the calls and whatnot, but, like, I mean, that's, to me, like, that was the difference tonight. Arkansas, it felt like they finished every drive with a touchdown, and Ole Miss didn't.
Did you – I'm trying to think where to go with this. Big picture on this. Auburn, whatever, we don't know, all that kind of crap. Just overall, what's your take on this last week? I mean, if you just had to have gun to head, what's Lane's motivations been for this?
Man. I don't know, because I got thrown for a loop when John Cohen had to come out and admit, because the number that everyone had been throwing out was like 13 or 14 million in the war chest for NIL. When Cohen came out and said 7 million, didn't that kind of make you pump the brakes a little bit?
The AL.com report had to have some verification to it for sure. And I guess that's the point of this. It's been so amazing is that, you know, Chris Lowe puts that tweet out. He admits later on that he was being hyperbolic, but there's been no correction at all whatsoever. I mean, it still was sort of became fact. And that's what's allowed some of this to happen is it's just this weird certainty that Lane Kiffin is going to Auburn from everywhere. And now look, maybe he is. I'm not saying he isn't, but you're searching for reasons in weird ways at this point because the facility thing is crap. Ole Miss has a new facility come out in 2023 too. Auburn does as well. You've got the NIL situation that is completely similar, if not maybe Ole Miss having more money right now if that AL.com report is there, as I said in the preview before we came to you a second ago.
Yeah.
Yet for some reason there's this weird antiquated thing where it's just, oh my God, better job and he's gone and all those sorts of things where it's creating this strange media public vacuum that might not mean a hill of freaking beans. It might be absolutely nothing. But and I'm not saying it's swaying Lane, but it's swaying public opinion in a way that frankly just doesn't make sense. Where if Lane leaves, he's leaving simply because he wants to leave. There's no incredibly valid reason. I mean, it's the irony of this. And now look, maybe Lane's staying 5 more years. I don't know. My point is, if he goes, his only really valid thing that's even not valid then, it's the irony here. I think I said this to you in a text. He like would probably use a game like this and go, "Oh God, see, you can't get it done." It's like, well, it was kind of your fault.
No, I agree with that. I guess to me that as I try to like take it in this entire week, I do wonder, is this part of the reason why the SEC is the best league in football is the same reason why this is so over dramatic. This is so life or death. This is so like I do wonder if we're going to look back in 2 weeks and go, hey, man, the obvious answer was Auburn might be a better job, but Auburn isn't a better enough job to, like, sacrifice everything that you're doing. Now, another thing that I also thought about this week, and I don't know how much y'all talked about it, so I'll just riff right now. You happen to take a look at Ole Miss's schedule next year?
Yeah, Georgia replaces Kentucky.
So they go to Alabama, to Auburn, to Georgia, correct?
I mean, yeah, I guess so. Kentucky was home
because
sure.
Vanderbilt's going to be at home, and you always split your East.
Yeah,
your East team is what you always split your East. So it's to Georgia, to Bama, to Auburn, and who am I forgetting? So
Georgia, Alabama,
Auburn, State.
Yeah.
So is there the possibility of, hey, you realize in the end all people care about is the record, and your record's going to be worse next year, and people are going to go, oh, did Ole Miss take a step back? When the reality is Ole Miss probably won't be that much different of a team this year than they will be next year. But I do wonder, schedule dictates your record. Like, I do wonder if, like, that's the thing with him. And if you're going to Auburn next year, hey, no matter what you do, you're going to probably do better than they did this year because they went 5-7. And, like, I wonder if it's almost like a narrative thing where, hey, you just go and you restart the clock and you're going to be in better position. Because that's the other thing I would say. If he goes to Auburn, I don't think he's going to Auburn as a destination. I think he's going to Auburn to kind of like reset the clock a little bit. Is that fair?
I mean, that would be the one reason if you did it. Yeah, 100%. I mean, it would be simply because you get the honeymoon period and you rebuild I mean, all that stuff where you're not, I mean, I'm using air quotes here, in his mind stuff or whatever that would be.
Yeah, to be clear, Chase and I are talking out loud. Like, these are conversations that he and I have, via text message a lot. But, I mean, I understand that's what y'all want us to do. So, I don't want to, like, feel like I'm sidestepping the question. I still think there's a decent chance we get here in 2 weeks and we see that Lane's signed an extension for $10 million.
And at that point, he's not losing capital over tonight.
No, if anything, it's like, oh, he picked us again.
Yeah.
Because this is a conversation that I've had with Neil. I think what everyone forgets is, Chase, we've done this every year. We did this after the COVID year.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was Auburn.
Like, I think this is the Lane Kiffin cycle. And so the question becomes, is this the Lane Kiffin cycle by design, or is this, hey, you're dating a hot chick and everyone wants to date the hot chick. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, that, to me, like, those are two very different realities.
Do they need to win the Egg Bowl? Does it matter in any big picture situation?
I mean, in terms of do they need to win the Egg Bowl? I mean, obviously, we'll lift them in the bowl tier. And I think if you win the Egg Bowl, that means you're going to Florida, which means there's a decent chance I might be able to convince the old man, hey, Dad, there's a stream song golf trip. Like,
Yeah.
you've been begging for a stream song golf trip. Like, let's get the family there. But in terms of what does it matter? No, their season was decided last week, dude. Like, in terms of the season. But, you know, wouldn't you rather go to a warm place for a bowl game than a cold place? And I think that's what I do think that's what Thursday will determine.
Yeah. Neil's moving around. Let me go a couple of calls and I'll go to him. I appreciate it, bud.
All right, buddy.
All right, later. I think Neil's gonna be through quicker here in a minute. He was trying to get done out of the stadium, so let me we'll open it up real quick, and then as soon as he tells me go, we'll go there. So give me 1 second to do that. And I get that sounded like a dumb question. I mean, obviously, Ole Miss needs to win the Egg Bowl. That was not the point. If you were sending super chats, I literally could not see them the way my screen was set up, so I apologize for that. Hotline's up 662-259-7556 is the number. 662-259-7556. If you'd like to call in, we'll talk to you guys until Neil is ready to go out of the press conference. I think he's going to tell me he's ready as soon as it's over, so that's why it's pretty quick. I wanted to move that along a little bit there. So phone lines are open. We'll have to call again. 662-259-7556 is the who's on the line?
Hey, Chase. Wow, I can't believe I got first.
You did.
This is Eric. How are you?
I'm good, I guess. Doing all right. How are you?
Man, I'm making it. Last week, whenever we lost to Alabama, I wasn't like too mad just because it's Alabama, but I don't know. This game made me mad, like really mad.
Are you mad about
I
the
just
game
expected
and the
more.
blowout, or are you mad after the way the week went?
No, the week, I feel like you and Neil kind of prepared me for how the week was going to be. The way y'all talked about with Auburn and everything, I thought, okay, yeah, this is possible. I get it. Y'all didn't give me false hope, which I like. But I don't know, man. I felt like this game was just like, all right, we might be a little sloppy, but I didn't know we would be this sloppy. That's just the shock to me. But
Well, and I
I
said
don't know. I
it's
mean, the
where it brings
seven,
all the perception in. I mean, it's where, as I mentioned, it's where it's that deal of, when you look that sloppy, and look, it's the sloppiest Ole Miss has been under Lane Kiffin from a score standpoint. I mean, look, the officiating affected the score in the first quarter, but even beyond that, and I get that's how's the play, Mrs. Lincoln, because without some of those calls, maybe the game's closed and stays closed. Who knows? We can't do that either way. I don't know. But there were a couple spots there, maybe 28-6, you could get to 13, 21-6 or 3 or whatever it was, where had Ole Miss sort of steadied itself, at least you were behind, but it could have been a ball game. You know what I mean? They were sloppy even in
yeah,
those moments where you had a couple chances to take a step, kind of get up to a standing 8 count and go, okay, now let's play football for the next 35, 38 minutes, whatever time was left on the clock at that point. That was probably, is disappointing in anything for an Ole Miss fan, was that there were a couple spots to at least get back in the game, and they simply just could not make the plays to do that. And then defensively, in the second quarter, Kendall Briles and Rocket Sanders, I mean, Sam Pittman admitted in halftime, they just absolutely wrecked Ole Miss on that 3-man front.
they did. And I really just have one question, and this is just a hypothetical, but like if Lane does stay, for next season and whatnot, do you think he learns from this with how he handles playing Alabama, preparing for them, and even the aftermath, whether they win or lose?
I think he knew he had made a mistake, or at least he knew he was in trouble for maybe the way that. Because look, some of this might not even be his message. It might just simply be the players know what that game means to him. You know what I mean? I mean, it might not
Yeah,
even be anything
I
that he's
agree.
tangibly or directly doing. Although I do think he calls the game differently. I mean, I think Dart would go, hey, hold on, that's different than what we would typically do in these situations. So I think there's some of that. Um, but a lot of it is just simply what's sort of known around him at that point. I think that's as much as anything else. Um, but yeah, I mean, Lane has got to be very careful coming out of Alabama to not let them. I hate to say even beat them twice. Maybe that's not the word, but to affect the next game because, like I said, of all those different options, I think that's the one that makes the most sense as to why Ole Miss might have been somewhat flat out of the gate tonight.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe the cold weather. I mean, it sucks. I get it. I'm from the South. I don't like cold weather either, but I don't know. Anyway, well, that's all I had, Chase. I appreciate you
Okay,
doing your show, man. I'm going to keep listening. Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you. Device down. Who are we talking to?
What's going on, Chase?
How are you?
Doing good. Hey, this is Brandon from Kansas City.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to talk about a little bit more of the, I would say more the officiating of this game. Kind of had us on our heels most of the game.
Well, I mean, not most of the game, but definitely there in the first quarter into the second quarter where it dictated the score. I mean, you look at it, and I thought that the hold on Pettis was ticky tack. You score there, it's whatever it is. You're right back in the game. You answer, it changes the momentum. It settles the crowd down a little bit. That one score would have done so many different things to benefit everything for Ole Miss. And then when that happens, you're just kind of getting the ball rolling toward a lot of really shitty calls at that point because the Arkansas touchdown was offensive pass interference. I mean, maybe they still score 7, but they'd have had farther to go. It'd have been 1st and 20 or 2nd and 20. Maybe you hold them to a field goal there. That changes the score. And then, I mean, maybe the damnedest thing of the whole deal was the pass interference down the field on Arkansas where the flag's thrown and the head official picks it back up and says no interference. I mean, just stuff where it was baffling. I mean, I sent a couple texts and said, it's not law of averages. That's the wrong term. But if it's just sucky officiating, at some point it's got to be sucky on your side, and Ole Miss is not feeling that at all right now. I mean, it's 2 weeks in a row where it 100% dictated the score and the tone of the football game early on.
Yeah, that was my thoughts. Sitting here with a buddy watching the game, and I said, "Oh my God, he never got outside the shoulders on Pettis on that first touchdown to Wade," and I was like, I just don't see it. And then as the penalties kind of tacked on there, I said, God, is this them going after Lane after all the retweets from the penalties? Is this SEC officiating going after Lane?
As a whole, I mean, it's one of those deals where, no, I never think that the entire crew has been done whatever. You know what I mean? Is one person pissed off about something? I mean, I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know what the system looks like. I'm just saying at some point when things start walking and talking like a duck, it's probably a duck to some extent. I don't think it's a deal where, yeah, I mean, all 7 people are told, hey, whatever, because you start getting into, okay, how is that staying quiet and believable? But I mean, it's also impossible to think there was nothing involved whatsoever 2 weeks in a row because, I mean, at some point, again, it's got to go the other way. And I mean, and Ole Miss got a couple breaks against Kentucky, but you have not had one of these games where you go, oh my God, the other team Ole Miss was playing just got absolutely hosed there. You know what I mean? I mean, there's some calls, there's some
Right.
stuff. I mean,
To me,
yeah, I think Ole
my
Miss got
whole
the benefit
point.
against Kentucky, but it wasn't like today.
Right. Hey, there's no doubt. The first half officiating to me just completely turned the whole tide of the game. They to me they basically took the whole game in their own hands. Just basically took all the life out of Ole Miss.
No, it did. I mean, it affected Ole Miss's composure, I thought. I mean, I thought if nothing else, Ole Miss got a little out of sorts right there, a little discombobulated. It totally changed things. So yeah, 100%.
No doubt.
Yep.
All right. Well, I appreciate you calling me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Who are we talking to?
This is Courtney.
Courtney, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Am I ready?
Yeah, you're good. What's on your mind?
I was just wondering how long are Ole Miss fans going to allow the officials to keep dictating the outcome of the game before the ball's even kicked off?
what? Well, I mean, fans probably can't do much about it. I'm always.
Well,
It's one of those.
that's the misunderstanding, though. Fans can actually do a lot about it.
How so?
You got all these students, parents, alumni. I mean, at some point, you're going to have to take it to an SEC level because the calls I saw tonight were terrible.
Tonight early was as bad as I've seen in some different ways. It's more of just the overall protection of officials that I don't understand. It's not even necessarily about parents or fans or anybody else doing something. It's about the standpoint of you don't have the pool reporter that talks to the official. There's still they've got to change the fact that officials just have this hands-off thing where if you talk about them in any way, you're fined or you're ridiculed or whatever. It makes no sense. Absolutely.
But it wasn't just tonight. It's been throughout the whole season, and not just this season either. And at some point, there has to be a grading standard, not just from the SEC people themselves, but from like random third-party people.
Well, and that's one of the dumb things too. They've added in some officiating grade systems and changed them up, but then they don't make them public. So there's no actual public ridicule or negativity to people who do their job in a very shit way. Nothing at all. So I mean, yeah, it's an entire system. It's broken in a lot of ways. I mean, look, it's been two really bad weeks in a row. And then that's emphasized it and that's made it worse for sure. So I mean, I agree with you completely, and I appreciate it.
And also, I'd just like to say that I was listening earlier from Jeffrey, and I don't think that the job question with Lane has anything to do with tonight's outcome. I think the outcome was decided before that, and I think that if there was any question of Lane leaving, the team wouldn't have kept playing. They would have just laid down.
We'll talk about it. I'll let you go after this, but it's kind of curious. If the outcome was decided before the game, what was the reason? Why benefit Arkansas over Ole Miss?
I think Lane's commentary last week about the officiating, bowl eligibility with Arkansas, I think it was a mixture.
I think Lane definitely riled them up. I don't disagree with that at all. So yeah, I get that. Courtney, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Who's on the line? Who are you talking to? Yes.
Yeah, I'm trying to get through the Oxford Exxon podcast.
Yeah, you're on. Go ahead. What's on your mind?
Hey, Jake. Hey. Dude, I'm listening to some of the calls. I'm more behind you on the stream. I guess where I'm aggravated with this whole thing is this is what happens when you have the celebrity coach who doesn't really refute anything. The team just looked flat. I mean, I'm like everybody else. I thought the officiating was absolutely abysmal in the first quarter, but I mean, if you go from there forward, good God, we didn't tackle, we didn't execute, we just didn't do anything right. I mean, I don't know. I'm just very frustrated with the whole thing right now.
I think if they had gotten into the game early, that first touchdown is not called back. I think you have. I mean, I'm not sure they win, but I think you have a different game at that point. And here's the thing about Lane: is I can sit here and I did an observations. I criticize him to some extent, and it's true. But at the same time, I don't think necessarily he could have signed the contract. He could have done some different things along those lines, but I don't necessarily blame him for spending every week going, no, I'm not interested in Auburn, because frankly, nobody's going to believe him. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot you can do unless it's a tangible thing to actually change, especially the national media saying, well, still, he's just saying that, and as soon as Thanksgiving is over, then that's whatever. I mean, it's one of those deals where it's a twofold double-edged sword. It's catch-22 in a lot of ways because he's still going to be the same celebrity coach. He's still going to be valued. He still has that reputation of jumping around, which is contributing to this, no matter what he is or is not doing here in a week. But on the same token, um, time is the only thing that's going to change that. A, and then B, um, frankly, Ole Miss can't keep doing this every year. I mean, you know what? He kind of is going to get this one. If he stays at Ole Miss, he's going to make 9-5, 9-6, whatever it is of base salary. But that also requires expectations. At some point, that requires a level of winning where, unless you're really, really, really improving, and we're talking playoff at that point, you're not really due a raise or any of this, kerfuffle of a mess for these couple weeks. It's a weird dynamic.
No, exactly. I mean, I think y'all have addressed it this week. And Neil said it. I mean, they've given him enough contract wise. They bumped him up, and of course, if everything's to be believed that's gone on this week, the challenge for the NIL money has gone up. So, I mean, at some point, you just kind of got to, I don't know, when you get to this point with a celebrity coach, yeah, you got to go, okay, this is where we are. This is the best we can do. If you can do better, we'll see you. Congratulations. Well, I'm not. I don't know. This is probably his worst game as a coach of Ole Miss that I've watched. And I've seen probably every second of every quarter he's coached since he's been here. And it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just frustrating to watch this tonight because it was just flat. And like I said, we can piss and moan about officiating all day long, but it was just flat and uninspired at some points.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, I thought that was definitely the case. Now, the officiating affects mentality and mood, so you can't completely discount that. But there was a couple spots there where you could have, kind of gotten back into it. And I thought, well, that's where they had a couple of alignment penalties. They just sort of seemed discombobulated from that moment on for a few minutes. And that affected things.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you taking my call, man. Have a good night.
Uh-huh. Who's on the call?
Hey, this is Galen from Hattiesburg.
Hey, Galen, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right. So it may not show up in the stat line, but Robert Allen's contribution to the basketball team, do you think it's going to be a big?
Okay, come on now. Yeah, come on.
I'm joking.
We're gonna skip that.
I know everybody's got all kind of thoughts about the commentating from Cole Kubelik and all them, and everybody's got all these thoughts about the officiating and everything that go on. What would be in any other profession on planet Earth other than being a college football coach? What would it be like if your employer paid you $7.5 million a year and is essentially held hostage by the fact that at any moment you could just pick up and leave and go to your biggest competitor, in a sense, and take your best employees with you without any kind of recourse, which is to ask, is there not any kind of non-compete or something that could be put in? Like, if Lane wants to jump and go to the NFL, coach the Chargers or something in a couple of years, that's one thing. But to go to a division rival, if in fact he was to leave, it just seems so damn dirty to me.
There is literally nothing unless you make his buyout prohibitive to the point that no one wants to pay it. There's a couple coaches out there, but he's not going to agree to it. I mean, it would take the coaches have you over the barrel. And ADs, when they make so many of these decisions, they're emotional and their fan base just wants the guy no matter what, that they're entering into these crap contracts. So that's the only way to fix it from that standpoint. And then, I've said this, and I'm not going to harp on it right now, but if they're not careful with a couple of these rules and make sure they don't go farther down the road, I think it's not the beginning of the end of college football, but it's 100% a change in the dynamic of the sport from a viewership standpoint and everything. Because, this isn't even about Lane Kiffin. I mean, look, let's be honest for a second. I'm doing 10 thoughts for Neil tomorrow because he's driving back from Fayetteville. I'm going to write about this a little bit. Is that the big thing for Ole Miss this week? The story this week really was not Lane Kiffin from an Ole Miss football standpoint. It was about the fact that Ole Miss has raised, let's just call it over $6.5 million for NIL in a short period of time. They've gotten a lot of resources, a lot of corporate resources for that. They've offered Lane Kiffin a salary that's top 5 in the country. They have absolutely established in a public way that they have a place in the table and that they're willing to compete at the highest level in the sport. That's the story of the week. Whether it's Lane Kiffin or whoever comes after them, they have the ability to get the coach, to get quality coaches and to put resources in. The biggest problem with Lane Kiffin to Auburn is the fact that, yeah, he can just take Quinshon Judkins and a bunch of people with him potentially. You could gut your roster when the coach leaves in addition to it. I mean, that's the damnedest part of this.
Which to me, as a diehard fan, I have been my entire life, that's the worst part of all of it. Like, hypothetically, if that happens, if he leaves and goes to Auburn and has – I've had this thought. Quinshon Judkins rewrites Ole Miss's rushing record book. And then when he goes to the NFL, when he plays on Sunday night, he says, Quinshon Judkins, Auburn University. I mean, that is the biggest slap in the face. And of course, this hasn't happened yet. But it makes me love college football less the past 2 years than I have my entire life. And it's just sad.
Well, I mean, that's not even – I mean, yes, good point. It happened in Oklahoma. I mean, Caleb Williams is playing for USC right now. Well, I mean, that's not even taking into account that if they run through this thing where they allow multiple portal trips. Because if you allow waivers on these portal trips, I mean, we might as well be allowing damn trades at that point. I mean, seriously, it's just complete and utter chaos. I mean, the NFL system works, and we've said this 1,000 times. It's where Lane's completely wrong. The NFL has contracts. You're locked into a team for 3 or 4 years or 5 years or whatever it is. This makes, I mean, right. This is chaos where it affects fandom in a lot of different ways, 100%. I mean, yeah, I thought the SEC Network, I mean, it's kind of an addition of stupid or liar with SEC Network, because either they had no idea about Ole Miss's situation as it is, but that means they didn't ask the questions. Because if you're going to do that on national television to that extent, you've got to make sure you have a good idea of what the hell the other school is going on in those same exact situations. I mean, they've been in Oxford, and the Manning Center is currently under construction. You're staring at it. And you mentioned Auburn's facilities, you mentioned Auburn's NIL, but then you do nothing to go the other way for Ole Misses. I mean, it's completely illogical at that point on something that, I mean, yeah, you're sitting here with a corporate partner talking about whether he should take players with him to another school inside the division.
A corporate partner that is sponsored by a league of which you make up 1/14 of is Ole Miss. Like, it's the blatant disrespect and everything that they showed in that as one of their, whatever you want to call it, board members. Would you consider Ole Miss a board member of the SEC Network in a sense?
I mean, sure.
1/14
I
is there. I don't know, the whole thing. Like, I think my wife is getting tired of me ranting for the evening. She's been a trooper.
I understand. Well,
anyway, love the show, love the podcast.
Yep. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Later. All right.
Who are we talking to?
Hey, this is Mark.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
Pretty good. How are y'all doing tonight?
I'm hanging in. I'm doing all right.
Holding the fort down by yourself, eh?
I'm waiting on Neil. We're just kind of talking till then. Yeah. You guys are hanging out. A lot of people in the stream. We're all good. I've got about 850 of my friends online right now, so it's all good.
There's no need to wait on Neil. You're going to do fine just by yourself, Chase.
I'm good. What's on your mind?
I got a few things on my mind. We'll start with one that's a little more generic. We were so close to total chaos today. Michigan at the last minute, TCU at the last minute, Tennessee completely falls on their face. USC sneaks one out. We were so close to total chaos today. Did you? I know the Ole Miss thing was going on. Were you able to pay attention to any of it?
Yeah, I saw a good bit of it. Yeah.
I mean, it was right there. I really did. I hated to see what happened to Hendon Hooker. I mean, they were going to lose that game, but man, that was tough to watch. Did you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess everybody's been on a rock, but South Carolina ends up routing Tennessee, so that's that for the Vols.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was tough. So on the Ole Miss game, I don't know. I have a thought, Chase, and maybe it's a bad thought. Maybe it's a loser's thought even.
go ahead.
We were out of the playoff picture. It ended last week with a tough loss against Alabama. We all have an idea of what Kiffin's goals are here. Is it really that surprising that things started off weird this week, especially when you take into consideration the fact where we were, who we were playing, kind of what the circumstances were, that we weren't super sharp? I mean, I'm not that surprised. Were you?
No, I mean, there's lots of reasons why. I mean, as I said, it's not even necessarily about that. It's not unsurprising. It's nothing along those lines at all. It's simply, given everything going on, it's a really bad time from a fan base buy-in, from a public perception for this to be the case. I mean, you're coming off that loss to Alabama. I mean, the Grove Collective had a really, really, really damn good week. It was highly publicized. It's all those things, and then immediately following that is this game where you're down to a team that's 5-5 and lost to Liberty 2 weeks before that. And I get transitive property
Yeah.
is not a real
Yeah.
thing, but it still is a point of reference that a team that lost to Liberty, who lost to Virginia Tech today and lost to UConn last week, you're down 42-6 at one point on a week where you're trying to establish yourself on another tier of being an elite program because of the contract you just offered the head coach and the NIL that you're putting together to maintain your roster and procure players moving forward.
Yeah, and actually you articulated that as well as probably anybody could have. But the reality of the situation is that Arkansas team also was within a mustache hair of knocking off LSU, who's getting ready to play a game in a couple of weeks to go into the college football playoff. So it's not like they're nothing. They had a quarterback lining up for them who's spent his entire college career trying to prove that he could have played at Ole Miss. So I mean, there's a lot going on there. But the whole the Kiffin cloud is what hangs over us right now. And where's he going? Is he going? Is he staying? Like that's what's going on right now. Am I right?
Well, yeah, because it continues to be this deal where you don't know exactly how you're moving forward as a program. I mean, it's not even blaming Lane or criticizing Lane or anything else. By the way, UPS Shaggy, thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. Whatever you want, we'll do it for a few minutes. You're awesome. But it's one of those deals where you're it is what it is. And look, there's
limbo.
There's a world where Lane Kiffin did a lot of these things to assist in his current position. Because look, I mean, let's step back logically. Could Lane Kiffin be introduced as the new head coach at Auburn on Friday? Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't know. I mean, as I said on the message board today, anybody who says they 100% know, they're completely and utterly full of shit. Nobody knows. Maybe not even Lane Kiffin, but if so, only Lane Kiffin. The point being, there is a world where Lane Kiffin simply is doing everything he can do to procure more resources for Ole Miss, because there's a lot of logical reasons why you can get to Auburn and why you say, okay, what Lane is doing is a sign that maybe he's doing this. But on the other side of it, on the Ole Miss side, there's also a world where, hang on, if you're going to Auburn, why are you spending a week trying to drum up millions of dollars for a competitor?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, you take the Grove Collective from $3 million to $6 million or $7 million or $7.5 million
type of game.
Yeah, it makes no freaking sense.
And it doesn't, and it does. And so, all right, so let's have a conversation between you and me right now, where you were writing for the DM when I was reading the DM, and I've got a dad who loves Ole Miss, and I grew up going to Ole Miss. Like, all these things are true. And one side of the party says, why is Lane doing this to us? And the other side of the party says, why are we making Lane drag us kicking and screaming to get to the point where we need to get to anyway? And both of those things can be true, right? Like, Lane can be doing one thing And our fan base as a, I don't know, middle of the pack fan base for the last, I don't know, half a century can be doing another thing. Like both of those things can be true. And I don't even know that I've got a logical end to this, but I think that those things are going on right now. And you've got a coach who's at worst pretty good, at best maybe elite, who is trying to deal with a fan base who at worst is kind of a bunch of losers, at best hopes for the best. And you've got this weird dichotomy where the coach thinks you're better than the program has historically performed, and he's trying to drag you kicking and screaming and saying, let's go do this, guys. We can do this. If you'll come with me, I can make this happen. And you've got a fan base who's saying, Coach, we want to follow you, but you can't leave me at the altar. You just can't do it because I've been left there before. It happened 25 years ago. I've been doing this my whole life. Am I wrong with that?
It's also this thing of you can't Lane can't do this every year. Ole Miss can't just pay him $2 million more every year. You know what I mean? And that's what I said. At some point, you price yourself.
True.
At some point, you price yourself in, though, because look, if Lane Kiffin stays and he's making $9.6 million, is what I said a minute ago. At that point, it's playoff. I mean, you're a top 5 paid coach.
It is.
That means top 5 results. I mean, you're not paying 9.6.
Okay. So there is and this is something that you and Neil have talked about. There's a little bit of a wild card to this, in that we're about to go to a 12-team playoff, which sort of changes the calculus on how all of these games get played out. For example, today was an irrelevant game for Kiffin. We had lost the ability to win the West. We had lost the ability to go to the SEC championship. We had lost the ability to control our destiny in any way, shape, or form whatsoever. However, if 2 years from now today's game had happened, today's game would have had a completely different dynamic. It would have been Ole Miss playing to try to hold on to a spot to have an argument to be in the playoff. So, like all of the calculus in that changes. All of the competitive side of it, everything about that changes. So I get what you're saying. I think you're right.
Tonight wasn't a nothing game, though. It's where I will respectfully disagree.
Today was
with
a
Jeffrey
nothing game.
No, stop. No, because look, Ole Miss is still. I mean, you're seeing this because look, the damn Auburn thing at the end of the game showed you this about Ole Miss and Auburn and the two programs. Ole Miss is still fighting from a public standpoint to be more known as an elite program, where you just are an SEC team that wins a lot of games, and there's a big difference in 8-4 and 10-2. So while, yes, you can't win the West, you can't do all those things, getting to 10 wins again would have been a substantial thing, and continuing trying to change this narrative that, look, it's not affecting Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin or Jimmy Sexton or anything like that, but it is sort of affecting Ole Miss just in general. I mean, just from a straight program where it is today, it's not necessarily seen by the normal person as that spot that it probably should be in.
I think that's fair. All right, so I'm going to let you go in just a second, and I'm going to put you on the spot because you've earned the spot. It is, I don't even know what it is, November 19th, I think, somewhere right around there. We've got one more game left. Auburn handled business today against Western Kentucky, much to the chagrin of Neil and Tyler Siskey. And in 1 week, everybody's going to be asking who's going to be coaching Auburn. So I'm going to ask you, Chase, who's going to be coaching Auburn about 9 days from today?
Oh, hell, I refuse to answer.
No, come on. We got to lean into it. Who's going to be coaching?
Hell no, because, look, I'll be honest.
Or is it going to be Lane?
Nope. I'm out.
Yeah,
nope,
I'm out.
Nope, not taking it. Because, look, here's the deal. I mean, I've spent a week on Lane Kiffin's chances of being the next Auburn coach, or his likelihood of being the next Auburn coach. I've literally been between 45% and 55% for 5 days in a row. and it might move a little bit one way or the other. I mean, I've talked to so damn many people that it's at the point where if you want me to find you a source that says anything, I can find you one. Now, which
I
one of
can
those is
find
actually
somebody for
right
everything.
beats the hell out of me. Yeah. Who knows?
All right,
yeah.
can I ask you one question? And
Sure.
I am gonna hang it up, but I felt so. Neil made the post that he made the other day, and I read it, and I immediately was like, "Oh, I don't think he meant to write that." And I know how much pride Neil takes in everything that he writes, and I felt awful when I read it, and I felt even worse when he came in and wrote the apology about it.
Mm-hmm.
Is he cool in that situation? Does he understand that we all understand that like stuff happens every now and then? We good there?
Yeah, he was frustrated himself.
I know
that
he was.
Yeah, it's all
and
good.
Tell him not to be.
Yeah,
we're good.
It's all good. So
we love you. We love Neil. We're all good.
Thank you. Appreciate it, bud.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
What were you saying?
Go ahead. You're on.
I'm already on.
Yes. What's up?
Oh, that was quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Today's just been such a frustrating day. From Lane's gonna leave to Lane's gonna stay. It's a frustrating week, not day. Lane's gonna leave. Lane's gonna stay. He's got to figure something out. We've got to have answers at some point. Not necessarily one way or the other. Just at some point you got to care. You know.
When you say care, what do you mean?
I mean, I don't know that Lane. I think if Lane had committed one way or the other, it's a closer game. It's at least something. It's not 42-27. We don't give up as many points. We don't score as few points. Obviously, we had the holdings and all that, all the ref nonsense. But I mean, the players went to class all week. They had all their friends asking them if Lane's leaving, and they couldn't answer. They could say, "Oh, we don't think he is," and that I guess.
I mean, look, you can tell the team whatever, but I don't know. Lane 100% knew, A, and then B, again, I just don't think it. I mean, I understand. I don't even really disagree because I'm really trying to be hard not to talk out both sides of my mouth and rip him over something that I don't necessarily disagree with. But at the same time, nobody's going to take him at his word because he just, for whatever reason that's really not fair, has this reputation that, by God, I'm going to jump at anything. And look, he doesn't help it because he doesn't say anything about the team to the team or the players. And it's not saying anything. It's going out of his way to say that he refuses to say anything. There's a difference, as weird as that sounds.
Right.
Like,
don't
there's
think
one thing to
Lane's
go, hey, I really like it here. I'm good, blah, 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 blah. Instead, it's, hey, I just don't talk about those things. Well, those are two completely different answers,
exactly.
Even though the first one might be completely full of crap.
Right. I don't think Lane's a job jumper. I don't think his goal is to hop, skip to Auburn. I think he truly wanted, from what I hear, I think he truly wanted the NIL to raise.
That is
and we
possible.
did that. We did that, and it cost us today. And granted, it's a rebuild year, but coaches aren't wired to lose games on purpose. And not that he lost on purpose, but coaches aren't wired to risk losing a game to raise money. That's not in their nature, even if it benefits them in the future. I don't think Lane thought that or did that. I just think he cost us it on accident trying to raise NIL. And he did raise NIL. If we're roughly equivalent to Auburn's cash on hand, then we're fine. But today showed that the players weren't focused. They weren't locked in. The first half was a disaster all the way through. Granted, we had the holdings, but it was a disaster.
I mean, it was definitely a disaster. There's no doubt about that. I mean, it's 42-6 at that point. Sorry, I was texting Neil. I think we're going to get him in a second. Appreciate the call. I'm going to jump to a couple more on the call, Neil. Thank you. didn't mean to hang up. Call back, and I'll get you back. There we go. Who's on the line?
Maurice.
Maurice, how are you?
Doing good.
What's on your mind?
The contract.
Mm-hmm. What about it?
I mean, I just hate not knowing what's going on.
Amen. I would love to know how I can play in the next few weeks of my life. I understand that completely.
No. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I just mean the whole dynamics and like how it's going to affect us.
I mean, look, there was really no chance of something getting announced, I don't think, in those 2 days. I mean, I never even thought that was a possibility.
Yeah.
But once you
I
bring it up, it does at least bring that up, or you go, hey, hold on. Yeah, Neil's is gonna walk in a second. I'm getting to Neil in like 5 minutes, but he's not quite ready yet. Go ahead, Maurice, sorry.
Well, I mean, I just don't understand how we could like come out with it publicly without having some sort of agreement.
Well, it was just a call. It was a term sheet. Well, here's the two things on that, which is somewhat fascinating. When you do that, you're doing two things. You're putting. I don't think it was on purpose, but in some ways, you're putting pressure on Lane Kiffin because you're going, "Hey, it's right here. It's $9.6 million. Take it. We're doing everything you can do. We can do to make you happy." But the other side of it, and this is not. I mean, and again, I don't think this was necessarily the intent from Keith Carter. But what it also does is telling the country, hey, look, if he goes, we did everything we could do. We're paying him top 5 money. We did NIL. You know what I mean? Where you're erasing that whole thing of, well, I mean, look, it's just, it's Auburn's just this kind of program that all shucks, they've got more than Ole Miss in every little way. No, it's coming out and going, hey, no, that's what I said. It was the story of the week. It's Ole Miss trying to get a place at the table.
Well, but offering a contract of money that he ain't going to take don't prove anything about Ole Miss having more than Auburn. That's what sort of sucks about it is we lowballed his ass in public.
You don't lowball a guy at $10 million. It's a top 5 salary nationally.
It is if you're thinking he's getting an offer higher than that.
It doesn't matter. Salary is not going to dictate this thing. I understand what you're saying. I'm
well,
not
then what does it? What does it?
If he goes to Auburn, he simply no. I guess here's my point. If he wants to go to Auburn, he's just got in his mind that Auburn is a better job, and he doesn't have a. There's not a. No, listen. No.
In my opinion, the only reason why he would go to Auburn is because J.G. Tate and the Bunker and the Brain Drain are a lot better than this show. War Eagle motherfucker.
That's probably 100% the reason. You're right, 100%. He was so normal there for a minute. Hello.
Hey there. This is Charles from actually I'm from.
Who's on the call?
Hey, this is Robert from Clinton.
Hey, Rob. What's up?
Oh, well, not a whole lot. Just listening to a lot of people talk about things that they have no control over, and so we can spin our wheels talking about contracts and will he and won't he and all that. But if we get back into the gridiron and actually look at things we can talk about and look at the numbers from tonight, it also kind of lends into the narrative that was with the quarterback, this, that, and the other that was all through the summer. So Jackson Dart didn't have a great game. I mean, if you look at his numbers, yes, he had, 230, 240 yards, threw for 21 passes out of 30, 35, something like that. But KJ Jefferson had more percentage of completions, but he threw passes. You had a lot of pass behind receivers, passes that were well over receivers. So if we get into the narrative of quarterback talk that hovered and controlled everything this summer, this is kind of like Matt Corral's Texas A&M game where he has to bounce back from this. So the question that I have is, how much of the responsibility for tonight can we put on the players that were actually on the field? Yes, there were bogus calls. Yes, there were conspiracy theories and all that if you want to get into it. But the there were plays that were just not there. There were passes that were not made. There were catches that were not made. There were mental mistakes. So that question, how much can we put onto them? And then how important is the next game for them to kind of level out, especially Jackson Dart, to level out the boat from the rocky water that tonight stirred?
I thought Jackson was okay. I thought while the game was still a game, because that second half, I have a hard time making anything of anything, if we're just being completely frank at this point. In the first half, I thought the interception was a dagger because he made the same mistake he has made multiple times this season, where he just doesn't see that defender who's sitting down in zone coverage right there. But otherwise, I thought that he didn't get a lot of protection at times. He kept plays going. He made some throws. If he gets that pass interference call, then that helps down the field. I thought Dart was pretty good. I thought KJ, relative to his ability level, played out of his mind. I thought he hit a lot of throws. Ole Miss has really struggled with quarterbacks who can get outside the pocket and taking off. And what's interesting about it is they struggle with finishing the play. They've done a pretty good job getting pressure, but they overrun the play. They overrun the tackle so often. They allowed the ability to sort of get outside and get moving. So, yeah, I thought there was actually some times there where Arkansas just played better football. I thought Jefferson was really good. Sanders was obviously really good. And Briles found stuff there in that second quarter that Ole Miss just couldn't counter. They annihilated the three-man front. Ole Miss's linebackers were swimming at times. I thought they had a hard time with some of the schemes that Arkansas was running. And then, as we talked about, when you don't convert down there in the red zone and suddenly you get behind and behind and behind and behind, that's on the players. But there was some panic. And that's where, and I've said this 2 or 3 times, it's where I thought the game turned on what I thought about the game and then also the actual score at that point. Because there was multiple times when you're down just 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion that if you can steady, go score, get a touchdown, sort of fix and adapt and make some adjustments that are going to give you a benefit, that game settles down for you right there. And instead, you give it right back. You have the turnover. You have all those things, and boom, it takes off, and suddenly it's all gone from there.
Would it have been much worse if we played the way we did? Because I don't. Yes, I saw panic, but I also didn't see us fall apart like we've done in previous years. They kind of kept at it, I guess, for lack of a better word. If this was earlier in the season and we're going up against I don't know, a Tennessee, or we're back in Baton Rouge and the calls don't go our way and we don't get, the tosses, this, that, and the other, is it worse than what it was tonight? Because this wasn't a great Arkansas team.
Well, of course,
this is a fine Arkansas team.
No. They played well, but no, it is not an overly talented Arkansas team. Frankly, it's an Arkansas team defensively that you should be able to throw on more than Ole Miss did at times tonight. Now they ran the ball. I thought even in the first half, Evans and Judkins were outstanding.
But yeah, Judkins broke records, adding more to his yearly collection. So do you think that any of this is going to translate into Thursday? I know we're not getting crazy schemes and everything coming from Mississippi State, but do you think they'll be able to put this behind them and, kind of like the Ted Lasso thing, have a memory of a goldfish and move on? Or do you think that that's kind of another thing too. We're talking a lot about these.
Yeah, players are going to bounce back better than anybody else would bounce back. They, not that they don't care, but they just in general do handle this kind of stuff better. That's where I think that was some of Jeffrey's best salient point about 2014 is that Ole Miss lost that game to Arkansas and then came back and beat Mississippi State with a hobble Bo Wallace the next week. I mean, yeah, they're just these games. I mean, it's where Lane's right. They're just so they're so separate from each other in so many different ways that that's not something. I mean, Ole Miss, barring something crazy, Ole Miss is going to be much better much better on Thursday, and they'll be fine, 100%. So. Oh, okay. I've got an audio issue. I'm not really sure what's happened. All right. All right. Y'all chill for a minute because I need to call Neil. He's ready. So I know everybody's calling all at once. Give me a second. Let me get Neil on the line, if at all possible. How are you?
I am cold right this very moment is the very thing I would use to describe myself. Other than that, I'm fine. How are you?
Is it a little chilly?
It's like 21, 22. Not bad windy though, but it's cold. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm gonna make sure your audio is working, so I'm gonna hold on 1 second. We had an audio issue with the last caller, so I don't want to get 5 minutes into you and then realize we have a problem because that would suck. So
All good.
yeah. I guess look, I mean it's an obvious thing. Let's figure it out from there. And it's these places start. Press conference, Lane Kiffin, and General Auburn. Just take us through it because we've seen a couple tweets, but for the most part we know nothing about what happened.
So he came in. I don't think he has ever talked with the lighter voice. I was probably 5, 6 feet from him. I was concerned that my video would not pick up audio. He was talking so quietly. It appears that it's okay. That being said, he talked about being disappointed, about penalties, about 700 yards of offense, on and on. I asked him if he felt like his team was distracted, given the start that they had. Were they distracted based on, the noise that was around the program over the course of last week? He said that, he said, I don't know, maybe. He said he thought more it was an Alabama hangover. Trying to remember the whole answer. But generally, Ed, he talks about, again, 700 yards of offense. You can tell that's a talk. Just somewhat disingenuous, though. I mean, when it's 42-6 and the other team kind of turns it off and you're frantically chasing yards, it doesn't feel like quite the same accomplishment. But that's my editorial comment. We might get to that later. He then got asked some questions about the game, about his defense, about those kind of things. And then I waited till I felt like everybody had asked those questions. And then I said, Ole Miss presented you with a term sheet, contract, whatever, new terms. Can you comment on that? He said, I don't comment on those things. And then he proceeded to say, look, I love it here. I'm happy here. I'm not happy right now, but I'm happy here. I appreciate our administration and them doing all the things that they do to help us win. And then Brandon Marcello was there, and Marcello asked him if he could comment on in light of all the talk about his future, could he talk about, where he thought he would be, his future? I can't remember exactly how it was phrased. It was fair. And Lane said that's fair. And said, I really don't want to talk about next year when we still have a game left. Didn't really answer the question. Just kept saying he was happy here, that kind of thing. I can't loved it here, happy here, whatever. He didn't give the emphatic, definite answer that would silence anything. Let's put it that way.
What's your editorial take? What do you think?
I don't know. I wrote a column that said, he's at a crossroads where he's either going to have to love Ole Miss back or he's going to have to leave. I mean, he's leaving, he's either going to detour to the east or he's going to finally embrace Ole Miss back. And, you hear so many people talk, and, it's amazing to me how many people have a source, right? I mean, it's the damnedest thing. I'm like, everybody's got a source, and I'm like, God, I wish I had a couple more sources because I'd feel better about this, but I don't know. I mean, you can't ignore the noise anymore, Chase. I mean, to pretend that this is some made-up narrative at this point is disingenuous. It's stupid. It's dumb. It's false. I mean, I didn't hear the broadcast, but I got my phone lit up with people who did, saying that Cole and Rogers and all those guys were basically talking about it like it's a done deal. And now I didn't hear them, and maybe that's not exactly what they said, but it's not going away.
Yeah, real quick, and I'll let you finish the thought. What they did, they did not say it was a done deal, but it was very, here's why you go to Auburn and why it makes sense. And it was, whether they meant for it to or not, it was phrased as a superior program, inferior program conversation that was mostly only positive about Ole Miss as far as what Lane had built and what he had done himself. But Auburn had all the NIL and all the new facilities, and frankly, they even went so far as saying Lane could take a bunch of players with him to Auburn from Ole Miss, which is a really strange comment for a corporate partner on national television.
Yeah, if I'm Ole Miss, I'm not happy with that at all. I guess to finish my thought, I mean, there's so much noise. It's coming from somewhere. I mean, it's like smoke. There's this much smoke. There's a flame somewhere, and maybe it's not a big flame, and maybe it's a flame that can be put out. And like I wrote, maybe Lane knows what he's doing. Maybe, I know he's a guy who believes all attention is good attention, but in this case, Jake, I don't think it is. I mean, I don't know how you can take tonight if you're Ole Miss. And luckily for Ole Miss fans, they should take some solace in the fact that 17 and 18-year-old kids don't sit around and watch college football games with the audio up for 3 hours. So they probably didn't hear it. But in terms of for the product, that's not healthy. Not just losing a road game in the SEC, that happened. But a road game where you get smoked early. I mean, it's when Sanders makes that run in the first minute of the third quarter, it's 42-6. And at the same time, the announcers are talking openly about your coach leaving to go to an SEC West rival. I mean, I don't know how that's productive for his program if he's planning to stay at Ole Miss. So I don't know, here we are Saturday night, basically Sunday morning. Ole Miss plays a game in less than 5 days from this very moment against Mississippi State, and then the season's over, and there's not a whole lot left for him to address but this. And if he lets it linger into the weekend, I don't know. It kind of feels like you know where it's going at that point.
Yeah, it's two things, and I'll be quick because I've kind of mentioned these on the show already. But one is, if he knew he was staying at Ole Miss, and that's what he was going to do, and let's even give him the benefit of the doubt and say he was trying to drum up NIL money, and it worked, and all that stuff from the past few days. You still, though, on like Friday or before the game today, would have agreed in principle to that contract, gotten all the nervous money when they were worried you were going to Auburn, and then got the positive money from signing the contract. You know what I mean? You could have done both. You would have done that. Now, on the other side, and this is what I mentioned earlier, and look, college football is a dumb sport, so maybe this just is what it is. It's also really weird to do things that drum up tons of money for a collective and then go to a competitor where you have to compete with the money you just drummed up? That's weird.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought. Yeah, it is. I hadn't even thought about it like that, but yeah.
Because you
Look,
just took Ole Miss's collective personally yourself, and I mean I don't know the numbers. I mean Walker's not giving me specifics by any means, but let's say it went from $3 million to $7 million in 7 days. Well, that's $4 million more that Ole Miss gets to use to try to keep Quinshon Judkins and whomever else that Auburn might want if he went to Auburn. It's illogical.
You're right. It is. It is completely illogical. Now, like you frequently say, I don't want to steal your line. It is a crazy sport. I mean, it is a stupid sport. But yes, that's illogical. Look, I'm not a mind reader, and I'm not going to be the guy that tells you, "Hey, I know Lane." I don't. Now, I know people who, obviously, because of the age of my kids, I know kids who know Landry. I know people who are in communication with Knox because they've become friends. Their kids have become friends with Knox over the course of the last 3 years and all of his frequent visits and all of those things. That I can't help but think that deep down, Lane probably wants to stay. And maybe he will. No, maybe this is nothing more than a flirtation. Maybe this is nothing more than, hey, I owe it to myself to listen to this. I owe it to myself to hear what the offer is. I don't know. But, I wrote this too, and you and I have talked about this. I think we talked about it some on Thursday night. If Ole Miss is going to pay Lane Kiffin $9.5 million roughly, and I don't remember the exact terms that Richard reported.
It's give or take 9.5, 9.6, yeah, pre-incentive.
Okay, yeah, $9.5 million pre-incentive. So, listen, if you're going to live up to $9.5 million, you're going to hit most of the incentives, and you're going to get to 10 plus every year. If you're going to make $10+ million at Ole Miss, nights like tonight can't happen. Because nights like tonight don't happen at Alabama, at Georgia, at Ohio State, at the programs that are paying that kind of money to their coaches. That's the other part of this. And playing psychologist, there's a part of me that wonders if he says, if they pay me $9.5 million at Ole Miss, they're going to expect $9.5 million worth of results, and I can't do it. I mean, look at his roster. There's a lot of dead weight on that roster 3 years in. Guys that they brought in. There was some issues in the first half on that sideline. I mean, I saw stuff. Now, without being able to ask people what I saw, I'm not going to comment on it. I'm not going to write about it, but I saw stuff, Chase. Stuff happened on that sideline that does not happen on healthy teams. There was weird stuff tonight.
They don't play a lot of guys. It's a thin team.
It's a thin team. They don't play a lot of guys. I asked Jackson Dart, hey, is this, and that video's up at rebelgrove.com and on our MPW digital channel. By the way, the Lane Kiffin video is up. You can see it. I asked Jackson Dart, do you hear the noise? And he said, yes. I mean, you hear the noise. I asked him, does it impact you personally? And he said, I can only control what I control, which is a cliche answer for yes. Because if the answer is no, you say, no, it doesn't bother me. And I'm not picking on Jackson here, but the answer he gave was an affirmative answer. Because if you ask a yes-no question and the answer is anything other than no, then the answer is yes. So yes, it impacted him. 19-year-old quarterback who came here in large part because of Lane Kiffin. And now he doesn't know whether Lane Kiffin's going to be there or not. I'm sure he's thinking, okay, well, who's Ole Miss going to hire if Lane Kiffin leaves? And if Lane Kiffin leaves, I decide that I don't want to play for the new guy, can I get a waiver? Can I transfer again, whether it be to Auburn or anywhere else? So you don't think those things weigh on him a little bit this week as he's preparing to face Arkansas? Clearly. I mean, ask A.J. Finley. A.J. Finley's answer was a little different of, I don't know. We just kind of whatever. We don't talk about that. When AJ's a senior, AJ's going pro. He's had a really good season. He'll play in the National Football League next year. I mean, compare the two answers. Two really bright kids, AJ Finley, Jackson Dart. Two kids that, we've gotten to know a little bit with AJ over the years and with Jackson over the months. I mean, two smart, polite, intelligent kids gave completely different answers. One's a senior and one's not. And, and you had to know, and you and I talked about this, you had to know it was senior night here. You had to know there's a bunch of guys on that team that have been in this program at Arkansas for a long time, guys like Bumper Pool, who've been there like 8 years. And, there's other dudes like that. I recognize them as they lined up for senior day. Like, that guy's been here a long time. He's been here a long time. You knew those guys were going to play hard. You knew that bowl eligibility was a goal that Sam Pittman had openly discussed, and he got mocked for it earlier in the year, but you knew that it was going to be something that got talked about here. You knew that KJ Jefferson was going to play. You knew this game meant something to KJ being from Sardis and Ole Miss not really offering him. You knew all of those things, and yet in your program, guys were distracted. And Arkansas, to their credit now, they played really hard right out of the gate. Played with a lot of emotion. Their fans showed up. Their fans stayed. It was loud. It was rowdy. And then kind of in the third quarter, Ole Miss kind of melted down. Now, they put it back together and had a really good fourth quarter from put lipstick on the proverbial pig. But you had to know you were going to get that effort from Arkansas tonight. I felt like they would. I don't know whether you did or not, but I kind of felt like Arkansas would play hard tonight. And they did.
Yeah, you knew they were going to play hard. You knew they had kind of recalibrated their expectations and the fact that Ole Miss had not, frankly. They had not gotten over Alabama in the same way at all. Because I told the stream, look, officiating dictated some things early. There's no doubt about that. It impacted the game. But there was a couple spots where it was a 2-score game. Had Ole Miss calmed down and just played football, they were still in the game. And instead, they were discombobulated at the line of scrimmage. They had some motion penalties. They had some alignment issues. They blew some assignments on defense. They never could find a footing. It was like they were flat and shell-shocked. And when that happened, it spiraled and it was over in 10 more minutes. And that was it in ball game. Because, Sam Pittman, you're at the game. You're not seeing this. Sam Pittman walks off at halftime and tells, I guess it was Cole, whoever it was, essentially that they had figured Ole Miss out and that they offensively had found issues with the defense. They were just running Sanders at that point and knew that it wouldn't be stopped against that 3-man front.
I know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, whatever that's
Can
worth.
you hear me? I just flipped the Bluetooth. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're okay. Do you want to give any even sort of subtle detail to what you saw? They're asking.
I saw what appeared to be an altercation between an assistant coach and a player that was heated, that had to be broken up.
By another staff member.
And then that player was very agitated for quite some time, and a staffer was having to sort of play the role of peacemaker, pacifier. I don't know what it was about.
Yeah.
I have no idea. And at this moment in time, no real way to find out. I'll have the ability to ask probably tomorrow, but I don't have that ability at this moment.
So you made a good point. This thing goes on and on because I thought, and I wrote this in observations, this was worst case scenario for the type of way that Lane handles these situations, whether he's staying or going or whatever he's doing. When you get the blowout loss, it takes a lot of your capital. It removes a lot of patience with the fan base and dealing with the somewhat laissez-faire nature that Lane does all this kind of thing. Yeah, I think I'm with you. This thing gets through Monday, Tuesday, where Lane doesn't do anything with the term sheet, and this thing just kind of goes on. I mean, am I being crazy here? I feel like my antenna is up at that point where it's either Lane making critical errors that make no sense and he's not handling this correctly, or he very much is trying to go to Auburn at that point.
I mean, we
Because it
could
makes no
both be
sense.
wrong.
No,
Right.
that's what I'm
I
saying.
mean, you and I could both end up being wrong on this, but yes.
He could be making a bad mistake, but it would be a mistake. He is not doing the betterment thing for his program if it extends out another 48 hours.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could spin it positively for Ole Miss if this is still the talking point on the broadcast on Thursday night. I don't know how you could spin it and go, oh yeah, see, it's all the fact that somebody else wants your coach is a good sign. No, I mean the fact that you've made an offer now to your coach that's top 5, 6 or whatnot in the country, and you can't get him to commit to it because quoting Richard here. Oh, don't. Oh, I don't know how that wasn't a wreck just there. Wow, that was close. Quoting Richard here, is ostensibly about he wanted to, or depending on what happened with Auburn. Did I read that correctly?
Yeah, it basically
depending on what happened with Auburn, he wanted to hear Auburn's offer. I can report to you that Whataburger is a very popular place in Fayetteville, Arkansas at 11:45 at night, so much so that it almost caused a massive wreck just then. Anyway. Did I lose you?
No, I'm just thinking.
I mean, look, here's the thing. And I know it's not this simple, but if you're super happy somewhere and they come to you and make you a significant offer, and then you say, hey, I have this one concern, and then they basically assuage that concern, meaning NIL. At that point, usually a happy person jumps on it. Hey, I'm going to take this offer before someone can take it off the table. That didn't happen, at least to our knowledge. And at this point, I think you have to read something into that. Now, you don't have to read into that means he's necessarily leaving at all. But I think you have to read something into it, logically.
Are you in a spot where service is potentially bad at times, or what? What do you think?
Did my service drop off?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I can't tell if it's just your Bluetooth or we can hear you and I can understand you, but it definitely started kind of cracking a little bit.
Oh, okay. It ought to be better in just 1 second. I was getting onto the interstate.
Anything else from the players that was at all interesting?
No, not really. Both were really short. Jackson does not take losses well. He's very polite and respectful, but he's very short after losses. AJ, as you know, is always pretty political with his comments, so he didn't say much. AJ said he thought that they did not come out with a lot of energy. And I asked why, and he said he didn't know.
And I mean, again, we have to be, not us, but in general, you can't put one reason on an entire team. Ever.
Right.
I mean, it could be Kiffin for 20 of them. It could be Alabama for 20 of them. It could be 20 of them had a girlfriend issue. I mean, who the hell knows?
Yeah, I mean, AJ said maybe it was the cold, if I recall correctly. Maybe it was the cold. He's making stuff up. He didn't know. I mean, he said they didn't have energy, and I asked why, and he didn't want to answer that, and that's fine. I'm a big AJ Finley fan. He's a great kid, and I'm going to be cheering for him at the next level. But he's not exactly one to open up and give you a whole lot of detail on things. He's company man when it comes to that kind of thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not criticizing it.
So somebody's asking about Richard's tweet. Here's what he said, quote, Lane Kiffin has received a new contract offer from Ole Miss that would make him one of the 10 highest paid coaches in college football. It's now a waiting game to see if he will receive an offer from Auburn. More details this afternoon. At the time.
Yeah, the waiting game. Waiting game about Auburn.
And the numbers that are
Kiffin
being
made a
reported
joke.
make him tied for 5th right now. Go ahead.
Kiffin made a joke at the end. The last thing he said was, maybe they watch the first half and I won't be number one anymore. In response to Marcelo saying, you're the number one candidate at Auburn. I don't know. I mean, he was trying to make a joke. I'm wondering if the joke fell flat.
That joke only even sort of works if you're staying. If you're leaving, you're an asshole. And I'm not calling Lane one. I'm just saying in general, that's the way that's going to be taken. Whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, if Lane leaves for Auburn, he's going to be hated. I mean, it just is what it is. And tonight will only cement that hate. And God only knows what Thursday night could do to it. Now, State can't do to Ole Miss's defense what Arkansas can do in terms of just run the football down their freaking throat. State's more limited than that, so probably going to end up being okay. But
that jokes in general after you were down 42-6 are a little strange.
Yeah, and Lane was doing that thing about 700 yards of offense, 700 yards of offense, 700 yards of offense, and it was just like, yeah, but come on, man.
Well, in 1 week over just being pissed off about the loss and not wanting to talk about yards.
Oh, it's a great point, Chase. I didn't even think about that.
I mean, that's the exact question he bristled about a week ago after Alabama. Literally,
what went through my mind when you said? Literally, he jumped the kid that asked. Yeah. It just makes you wonder what's on his mind. That's all. I mean, wow, I hadn't even thought about that. You're right. You're right.
Yeah, if he mentioned it
1 week ago,
yeah.
1 week ago, he was asked about, hey, in the past, you guys have struggled to run against Alabama, and you had some rushing success against them tonight. And he says, look, I don't give a shit about yards. And tonight, pretty obsessed with 700 yards. And they were chasing those yards late, man. Hey, and listen, Chase, you're down. You're not winning that game down 42-6. You're not winning that game. Agreed?
Well, yeah. I mean, it would. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, it would take the miracle.
So just to set up my point, you're not winning that game at 42-6. If Quinshon Judkins gets hurt tonight, or Jackson Dart gets hurt tonight in the fourth quarter, feverishly chasing yards and points, and that cost you a loss against Mississippi State, was it worth it?
Of course not.
I mean, it was kind of weird.
Well, I mean, what
was that about?
I mean, they were doing it in the last drive against LSU too. I mean, that's been the dynamic all year.
Yeah, and I know what it is we don't quit. We play to the final whistle. I get it. But against LSU, you still had a month of football left. Tonight, you played Mississippi State in 5 days.
Who's been done since 2 o'clock in a blowout loss where the guys played like 25 snaps.
Yeah, Jackson Dart rolls an ankle real bad tonight. He's not going to be able to go.
That's an odd decision. I mean, as I was watching it, I was like, this is odd. And I thought maybe this is just anger. Maybe this is ego. Maybe this is frustration. I don't know. But it was just interesting to me that was the path that they decided to take.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it here, just somebody asked. Judkins went for 214. Evans went for 207.
Yeah.
41 combined carries for those two. One average 8.9, one average 12.2. Yeah.
Meanwhile, Jackson got hit a lot.
He did. I thought, look, we're not going to stay in minutia here, and I'm going to let you go in a second. I thought Jackson, frankly, outside of the interception, considering they only had 6 points, I thought he played pretty well in the first half. I thought he gave them a chance. They just didn't get the pass interference. He missed a couple throws where he had guys all in his face. The pass protection has not been very good lately. I mean, he was a gamer. I thought he did fine. He was not the reason they were chasing points and in the situation they were at that time.
No, I agree. I mean, Pettis caused them more problems in the first half than anything. Like that first one that got called back, I think that was on Pettis.
Yeah, it was.
I didn't think it was holding, but I'd been watching what was going on throughout the first part of that game, and he was carrying out plays too long, and the officials were saying something to him. He kind of had lost his cool a few times. He'd gotten overly physical a few times at the end of plays, like right as the whistle was blowing and right after the whistle blew. And so they were watching him, and he knew he was being watched. And on that play, that was one of those plays where at the end of the play, even though the ball had already left Dart's hands, it was a touchdown. He's throwing the guy into the ground and doing it. He kind of dragged him down, and they called it. I thought it was a bad call. But again, you knew what they were looking for, and there it was, right? And that's just with him. Maybe that's immaturity, but we're 11 games in now, and then I thought the second call was pretty clear hold on Williams.
Yeah, I did too. That was the one where it was a frustration from the first one. They got the call right on that one.
Yeah.
They missed the 2 pass interferences. Arkansas's guy pushed off, and then it was interference on Arkansas down the field on that throw down the seam.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
That's where that is. So, all right, we got a full week of it coming up, or I guess that's not really true, but we at least will be together on Monday and I guess Tuesday probably. We have not discussed that, but nonetheless, some podcasts coming from that standpoint. I guess you'll be on the road tomorrow, headed back. I assume you're up for a few minutes, right?
Oh yeah, I'm up. So feel free to call. I'll be up for at least 2 hours.
Oh, you think so?
Oh yeah, I'm that walking in the cold right there was invigorating. I'm wired.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I will holler at you in a minute, but appreciate the time, and we'll talk on Monday.
You bet.
Yeah. Bye. Was Neil McCready there? Okay. Who's on the call?
Hey, Chance, this is Justin from Jackson. How you doing?
Justin, I'm all right. How are you?
Good. Just wishing you a happy birthday, number one.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I got some hard-hitting questions for you. All right, number one is Resilient Revs on audiobook. I'm not a great reader.
It will eventually, but no. Kindle edition comes out in like 3 weeks, and then audiobook is after that. That is where we are, but it is not there yet.
Awesome. Second question. Over, under, how many times do the Bianco bunt next year? 15.
Oh, way under. He's not a bunter anymore.
Wait. Okay.
No, not at all. They only bunted like 6 times the whole year.
Well, it when it works, huh?
Yeah, it's outdated. Yeah, he way under.
Wow. Love that. All right, just want to give a shout out to the Tater Tot boys. Love you, Chance.
Yep, thanks.
Good night.
Night. Line's still open. Take a couple more calls. Somebody has them. We haven't gotten quite 2 hours yet. Skype's actually a little weird. I'm not really sure why. Who's on the line?
Hey, Chase. This is Austin from Pontotoc.
Austin, how are you?
Well, man, I'm doing pretty good other than my Rebels, but everything else is good other than that. I just had a quick question before I went off to bed. Been a good show. I want to know your opinion. Why do you think the fan base hasn't been, or maybe not the fan base, why is the narrative from Oxford right now so negative as far as Lane, but nobody really seems to be talking about the fact that the Grove Collective apparently has had a really, really good couple of days. Why do you think that is?
I mean, I think this is just fresh. I think that would have absolutely been the main story had even in a loss that didn't look like the loss looked like. I mean, I said this going in. I thought the Grove Collective news was the bigger story of anything that has happened over the last 5 days, including Kiffin's dalliance with Auburn and whatever happens there. I mean, the fact that they have an NIL money that is relevant to the rest of the conference for the most part. I mean, especially when you look at that AL.com story that comes out that says Auburn is, their goal every year is $7 million for football, and Ole Miss, I mean, frankly, has a little more than that right now. No, that is the most substantial thing. Where no matter what happens, Ole Miss can still stay at the table and offer the next coach a lot of NIL opportunity and, frankly, a salary that is nationally elite at that point.
Which is just really cool to think about. It's just been odd to me that, it seems like, because you've been saying it for the last few days and I've been agreeing with you. And it's odd to me that hasn't been covered as much as I think it should be.
Yeah. Well, there's a good point here that, I mean, it was made in the stream. Yeah. I mean, I wrote it on Rebel Grove, but frankly, I mean, Chris Lowe never came back and corrected what he said. There's been no national narrative that Ole Miss has taken the jump that they have. I don't know if that's, I mean, we can put that, I mean, blame's not really the right word, but we can put that onus on whoever you want to, whether it be the collective itself to go put it out there somewhere, whether that's, Ole Miss in some way, if that's just simply the reporters doing bad jobs. I mean, I don't know. It's probably all a little bit of everything, but the fact is there have not been a way to this point. The narrative has not changed that Ole Miss is struggling. That change has been completely different.
Yeah. Earth now for 25 years. I've been an Ole Miss Rebel for 25 years. Just graduated last year, and let me tell you something. I'm pretty unbiased. I try not to see through rose-colored glasses, but I just feel like I'm speaking on behalf of most people here. For whatever reason, there is just a media bias against this school, and I don't know why. Frankly, I mean, I have an opinion. I just don't get it. And I just want to know, in your opinion, do you think we're getting out of that, or do you think I know that's a deep question, a loaded question, but do you think that's kind of going away, or do you think we're still kind of stuck in that? Because watching the game tonight, it felt like that was still a thing. I know it's loaded, but try your best with that.
Tonight had a weird feel to it, but in general, I think it's coming out of it. I mean, you just have to win. I mean, you look at Ole Miss, and that's why I think Thursday is important to beat State again, to put another log on that fire. I don't even mean program separate, but just another season of winning and separating from that to some extent. Getting to 9 or even 10 with a bowl or whatever. I mean, at some point, win totals change that, salary change that. Frankly, Lane Kiffin has done a lot to change that. You know what I mean? I mean, there's been a lot of things where, it's been a process. Sports writers, especially, it takes a lot to get them to change narratives. I mean, by God, they will go to the hill dying over something. I mean, if Nebraska has one good season, they'll act like they never left for 25 years. So, no, it takes time, but frankly, money expedites that. What really matters are coaches and agents and players. And if you have the cash to do that, who really gives a damn what anybody else is saying?
Right. And before I get off the phone and let you get back to it, because I know you're probably ready to go to bed like we all are. But, man, hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. Hope Neil gets home safe from Arkansas. Hope he got to see the kids. I hope I speak on behalf of most of us in the stream that he gets way too much hate for that. And I'm sorry he does. And I hope he got to enjoy it. But appreciate you guys. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Thank you.
Who are we talking to?
What up, Jace? It's Vibin.
Hey, Vibin. What's up?
Oh, man, I didn't even catch the second half. I literally tuned out as soon as, what was the score at halftime? It was what?
It was
Arkansas,
35-6.
Oh, God. Yeah, that was brutal. I was at a Friendsgiving with a bunch of LSU fans, and everyone took Arkansas. I was the only one that took it. It was brutal, man. So Judkins they had a pretty good second half, though, right?
I mean, they did, but they were down 42-6 when it started. But yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Ole Miss had 703 total yards and lost by two scores.
They had 700 total yards tonight.
703. Yes.
Jesus H. Christ, that's kind of insane.
I mean, yeah, the stat line is a little weird. I mean, they ran for 463. Ole Miss ran for 463.
Judkins had 200. Evans had 200, right?
That is correct. Dart had 44.
Yeah. Do you think they win the Egg Bowl next weekend? Or Thursday, I guess I should say.
If they are healthy, and the game did not beat
Trigg
them
play
up,
tonight
yes,
at
I
all?
think they win. Not that I'm aware of, but I haven't checked. Not that I saw, but I haven't checked snap counts.
Okay. I think they're going to win Egg Bowl. I don't know. This is such a weird spot right now. I mean, I've had so many people say, "Oh, Kiffin's staying," and then so many people be like, "Oh, Kiffin's leaning Auburn." That it's just between the cold and the fact that they had an emotional letdown because of last week, and then Kiffin and the whole Auburn thing. I think they were just due for a bad loss.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Drew maybe has the better point in the stream. They were down 35-6 at half, despite having 330 yards at halftime. They had 330 yards and it scored 6 points.
Well, okay. The one play I did see which drove me crazy was Dayton Wade's touchdown, and they called a holding on Micah Pettis.
That's correct.
That was not a goddamn hold.
It was not a hold. That is correct.
It was not.
That is correct. It was. Not a hold.
Look, and I know the cute thing in the Ole Miss fan base of Rebel Grove is to blame the officiating, but Jesus, that was. I mean, he just hooked his shoulders. He hit them.
The red zone issues lost the game. The officiating combined with on 3 plays that were not that one, or there was that including one of them, and then the lack of red zone. Yeah, 100%. So.
Well, I didn't even watch anything in the second half. Yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw the score, I was like, all right, I'm done. But I'm happy to know that he's playing good. But, I knew Judkins was going to get his, and then I'm happy to see that Evans, ran for 200 yards. But, I mean, if you had to guess, what do you think the line is for Mississippi State Thursday?
Ole Miss -5.
Okay, see, I have a bunch of Mississippi State buddies that said it's going to be like Ole Miss -8.5, and I'm like, dude, there's no way.
That feels a little high.
I don't think it's
given what's going on.
That feels super high.
Yeah.
Granted, it's in Oxford, but I don't. Yeah, that's a lot. But
yeah, my guess is around 5.
I feel like there's so much, pardon my French, shit going on with the program right now that, if Lane was locked in, then, you might be able to justify like over a touchdown favorite, but I don't know right now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was a bad night. It was a terrible night, but yeah. I mean, James had 200 yards, so he's got. Did he break the single season record?
He is now the yards and touchdown record holder for Ole Miss on the single season.
There you go, guys.
1,300 and something yards and 16 touchdowns.
I love me some Neil McCready, and but I hate Arkansas. That sucked tonight, but there you go. I feel like, because I'm not gonna lie. All right, Mississippi State, they're decent against really bad teams. I feel like they have a really hard time stopping the run against decent SEC teams.
No, that's very true. They struggle with that. They've been trying to run the ball a little more themselves. It's not a bad matchup for Ole Miss. I mean, if Ole Miss is reasonably healthy and sharp, it's a pretty decent matchup. Ole Miss tackles okay in
I don't even
space.
think it's
I mean,
yeah. That's what I'm saying, Chase. I don't even think it's like a drop eight thing. I just think you have to play, disciplined defense and play your zones, and then it's and then the fact that it's in Oxford, like I mean,
constantly get them into 3rd and 6 and then make a stop. That's it.
Yeah.
That's how you beat them.
I mean, everyone does the Will Rogers thing, and to his credit, he's lit up the stat sheet, but I just don't know if that translates against decent SEC teams. So I'm very curious to see how it turns out, but I'm sure I'll call in. All right, appreciate you taking the call.
Sounds good. Thanks. Have a good night. Who are we talking to?
Hey, this is Tommy from Sylacauga.
What's up, Tommy?
Yeah. I was just wondering, how upset do you think Ole Miss fans will be when Quinshawn follows Lane to Auburn?
Yeah, we talked about that. I've got a problem now where I'm getting so many. Who's on the line?
Chase.
Yes.
Hey, man. It's Dan Jackson.
What's up, Dan? How are you?
Hey, I'm good, man. Hey, that's why what you said earlier about the first half yardage, that's why I don't think it was the distraction. I do think red zone issues and then the penalties. When you take 2 touchdowns board like that, and then just snowball it. And the linebacker had game today. Troy Brown did not play well in the first half.
Yeah, he was swimming in the middle. I thought he was out of sync and out of spot several times.
Yeah, he was. He was running right and the play was left, and it was just plain as day on TV. But what I want to talk about is the clownery that was the SEC network tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And what an embarrassment. Look, Ole Miss was an embarrassment enough on the field. But look, these games happen. People get beat. Look at Tennessee tonight. They're 9-1, go for a playoff, and they get beat by South Carolina. You lose games, and this stuff does happen. But for that broadcast crew to act like they did, the whole game, they were in the stands eating popcorn with people. They were sitting on the bench trying to interview our kicker at one point. And at the end of the game, when they're sitting there holding the water for Auburn, when our coach, it's embarrassing. If that was on ABC, okay, you get a little bit, maybe CBS, all right. These guys are SEC network people. What are we doing? What is this?
I thought it was a really, really, really bad look. It was the only tweet I sent out the entire game was about that. I thought that given that it was SEC Network, given the whole situation, that it was incredibly poor form. Something that is not there. Real gear. I'll get to you in a second. I saw it. It's where if I'm Keith and I'm Ole Miss, I'm pretty pissed because it was one of those deals where you've got to at least say something at that point, and go, hey, look, because like I said, it's just wrong. Chris Lowe's tweet. Chris was not trying to cause the damage he did. He's admitted he was being hyperbolic.
But still, he didn't redact it either.
Yeah, that was my point. And he hasn't gone, there was never a, hey, no, this was incorrect or this was whatever or anything along those lines. It just stuck right there. And it has created a media narrative that ends up getting parroted on SEC Network at this point. Thanks for Super Chat, Real Gary. He says, Ole Miss rescinded the offer to, Oregon rescinded the offer to Cristobal when it was obvious. Would Ole Miss do that with OK at any point? Is there heat on him to sign before Thursday? There's heat on him just because if he thought he was staying or he was ever going to sign it, you sign it before Thursday because there's no reason not to. To me, if it gets anywhere close to Thursday, Ole Miss is not going to pull the term sheet. That would blow me away. But at the same time, it's pretty indicative that he's at least really, really, really considering some other offer because, you're harming your own program you're trying to stay at otherwise. Nothing else makes sense. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think in the next 48 hours something needs to come up like you said earlier. I think the buffoonery is the word for the SEC network tonight was embarrassing, and it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was,
Enjoy your show,
a
man.
lot of it is just what they were doing anyway, but there at the end, it was really bad. But yeah, thanks. Appreciate the call. Yeah, I got to you. Sorry about that. I had them. I missed a couple. I think. I'll try to make that up to people as we move forward. Catch up in the stream for a second. Any last calls before we cut this thing? Going a little over 2 hours here. Big crowd. I know we had a lot of Auburn fans in tonight. I could tell that. I was to the point that if Grind, if you're still there and you were trying to call in, I was avoiding some Alabama area codes there at the end from the trolls. Was trying to pick Mississippi numbers for the most part. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I assume when that was the town, that was probably where that was headed. No, you're good, Real Gear. I appreciate you. No problem at all. Yeah, it's the next 48. It's something like that. I mean, I think that's right. I mean, again, anything else, and I mean, it's very indicative of what's going on there. I mean, that's no secret at all. So, all right, I think we got a stopping point there. I know a ton are still in the stream. We're going over 2 hours. I think we've exhausted most topics. We'll be back with a normal week of podcasts for a couple days. Again, Neil and I will figure out what we're doing. I know Monday, probably Tuesday, and then kind of see what news dictates from that point. Now, Grind's not a troll. Grind's a good dude. He's with us all the time. He's not. He's been calm in this endeavor at this point. So, Kyle, thanks for super chat. He says, "Do you think Kibblick was the main one pushing Auburn in?" No, I mean I thought Cole handled things pretty well. I think it's just where the media went because there was no pushback on it at all. I mean, there was nobody to kind of fight it in any other direction. It's become a weird talking point ever since Chris sent that thing. It was strange to me. So anyway, thanks Anil, Jeffrey, all you guys for hanging out again. Arkansas winning 42-27 over Ole Miss. Back with the Oxford Exxon podcast on Monday. This will be in podcast form as well tomorrow. So I hope y'all have a good night, get some rest, and we'll talk to you again very, very soon.